is your boy?
He's 18. He knows best, but he doesn't drink or drug.
Praise God.
So, do you live in Frankfurt?
Yes.
Okay, I'll be there Monday.
On Monday?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'll go to the meeting Tuesday night.
Our share finder is here. I'll let her know.
She knows.
Okay.
She knows. I told her to come in and listen to this, and if she didn't like it, she can lose my phone number.
Oh my God. Well, thank you. Rigorous honesty. Why is it not more? He paid my coffee. I just realized I left him
Did
money.
you drive over or did you fly?
I drove, yeah.
How
My
long
parents,
was the drive?
it's 5 to 6 hours from Frankfurt, but my parents live near the Dutch border. So Wednesday night, I went up to mom and dad, and that was a 3-hour drive. And then Friday morning, it was 2.5 hours from
Fine,
there.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of nice to break it up, and then it's not, it's
not too
easy.
tiring,
Yeah.
How long was your flight, Jim?
I don't know, like from Chicago, seven hours, something like that.
No, you're not from Chicago. You're from the
Well, I live in Vegas. It takes me almost 3 hours to get to Chicago, maybe 2.5, and then from Chicago to Amsterdam. So, little layover here, little layover there.
Are you going to travel around while you're over this side of the world?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Frankfurt on Monday, Warsaw on the weekend or Friday or something, and then we'll go to the Philippines and then Thailand. And then go back to Vegas for a little bit. And then, they have I'll go to CA-LA in Palm Springs. I think the week after I get back to Vegas for another convention.
Wow. So you are a jet setter then?
Huh?
You are a jet setter for CA.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
We're gonna sell this tonight on
Yeah.
auction. Could you please sign your name on it or anything personal message?
Yeah.
Is it good or the marker? Want a better marker?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I'm going to get a better marker.
Yeah, make sure you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia.
The only question is if you're going to speak, if you can put the microphone really in front of you, so the sound will be
Like this.
So, blah, blah.
Hello.
Test.
Hello. Testing 1, 2.
Is that good?
Testing.
Can we turn
Hello?
this on and off? Tell you what, all the microphones are on. Is that why we keep getting the funny sound? Turning mine off while I'm not. I tell you, I'm not that very familiar with sound. This is what he asked.
Well, it's a change in format. If we
I tell you what the
sit.
truth is. They know they can rely on you. Her and me, we've never done this before.
Okay.
So you can come in to clean up.
Yeah.
They're giving us the benefit of the doubt.
No, never.
Yeah. Okay.
Daniel,
It is.
heb
Wow.
jij Serenity Keepers al?
Yeah, Frank. Yeah, I met him. He's right over here.
Ah, he's such a good boy. Are they? That's lovely.
1, 2, 3, 5, 6. No, 6 of my home room.
Where here, these two guys?
First 2 rows, basically, they're the
That's
Germans. And him too.
How long is CA in Germany?
Started meeting October 2013.
Wow, so
And
it's
it
new.
was David and myself. And there once was the beginning of a meeting in Hamburg a long time ago, and Nick Stitch was involved in pushing that, and they got area status. So when we started, it was just the 2 of us. We already were an area.
God, that's brilliant though. You know, to be like a pioneer really and take it into your country. You know?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it really
And
is.
we've done massive service work. We've got the legal entity sorted in the first 3 years. We have area meetings, we have climate meetings, we have proper legal documents, rent contracts with venues where we go. We have insurance cover for that, so it feels like
It's a
we
real
have
thing, yeah.
solid grounding.
Yeah.
Nice thing is, my partner David, he had spent many years in service in the UK, so he got
He
a
has
lot
a
of
lot of
service
experience,
experience.
yeah.
He knew when the UK went forming a legal entity.
How to do
They
it.
were already, well, they were almost
How do you
today.
do it? Like,
You don't get any unity
Niet?
if you have
Zijn er M's?
70 addicts having opinions about how to do it.
yeah,
So we decided to do it in a very simple, basic way.
that's brilliant.
Formulated bylaws, did an NGO registration. So yeah, and I mean that's the kind of work we've done in these years, and it's such an honor and a privilege. Yeah, and it turned my life around. I know flying all over the world on a job at a time when I was unemployed and should have focused on my career. I focused on CA,
Yeah, that's where it's done.
and I look around and suddenly the dream job really is just right there for me to just pick.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
it is. It is.
Spiritual principles is all your problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you?
Yeah, Ireland only has CA about 10 years, so I came in 7 years ago, and there's only like maybe 100 members. It's a very small fellowship in Ireland, and myself and Anthony, my boyfriend, we were at a committee last year for a convention, so we're trying to create unity and trying to get it up and going, and get people. A lot of people come into CA. A lot of people do step up, they seem to get okay, and then they go out the door, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, does that happen?
Well, we had 2 people who got to meet quickly.
Yeah.
Felt so good that they decided, I don't have a relationship, my boyfriend, my new client, blah, blah, blah.
Do you know what I think it is? In Ireland, there seems to be this idea that you don't really need to do step 10 and step 11.
What?
Yeah. Share from home, like community. I don't really do 10 steps like
Hello, everybody. We're going to start. Welcome to this speaker meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. My name is Wendy and I'm an addict.
Hey, Wendy.
Are there any other addicts in this room today?
Yay.
Welcome. First, a couple of housekeeping announcements. This is a non-smoking event. Smoking is permitted outside of the hotel or in the designated smoking areas only. Would you please turn off your mobile phones? There may be some here who are not familiar with our tradition of personal anonymity at the public level. Anonymity is one of the most important issues in the structure of Cocaine Anonymous. Traditionally, CA members have always taken care of preserve their anonymity at the public level. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, television, and films. We respectfully request that those gathered there honor this condition of anonymity. In keeping with our traditions, we request that no photographic or video recording of the convention be distributed, published, or downloaded in any general public forum, including the internet and/or any other electronic communication network. We specifically request that members refrain from posting any convention photos or videos on any social networking site that may identify as activity entity, or person as being associated with Cocaine Anonymous. If you should happen to recognize someone here who identified themselves as an addict, please keep that knowledge strictly to yourself. Cocaine Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, and that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from their addiction. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using cocaine and all other mind-altering substances. There are no dues or fees or membership. We are fully self-supporting through our own contributions. We are not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, or organization or institution. We do not wish to engage in any controversy, and we neither endorse nor oppose any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay free from cocaine and all other mind-altering substances, and to help others achieve the same freedom. This convention is made possibly not only from our registration fees, but also through the generosity of voluntary contributions. We will pass the buckets in keeping with our 7 traditions. Our new friends need to not feel obligated to contribute. Please remain quiet while the baskets are being passed. At this moment, I would like to ask Daniel to come up here. He has some announcement during the auction and the lottery.
Hello everyone, my name is Daniel, I'm an addict.
Hey, Daniel.
As you all may know and may have noticed in the lounge, is that there is a whole lot of beautiful stuff donated by several fellows that is for the raffle lottery and the auction. So I just want to make, just to bring it under the people that it's possible to buy lottery tickets and of course to be here tonight at our auction. And there are some really beautiful items this year donated. So please stick around and see for what we have for all of you. So just want to bring that in notice. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Daniel.
So I have somebody to come and read who is a CA member. Yeah, please.
My name is Joyce and I'm an addict. Who's a CA member? While the name Cocaine Anonymous may sound drug-specific, we wish to assure you that our program is not. Many of our members did a lot of cocaine. Others used only a little and some never even tried coke. We have members who drink only on occasion, those who casually refer to themselves as drunks and others who are full-blown alcoholics. Lots of us used a wide variety of mind-altering substances. Whether we focused on a specific substance or used whatever we could get our hands on, we had one thing in common. Eventually, we all reached a point where we could not stop. According to CA's 3rd tradition, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using cocaine and all the other mind-altering substances. Whatever you may have been using, if it led you to this meeting, you're probably at the right place. Over time, virtually every single one of us has realized that our real problem is not cocaine or any specific drug, it's the disease of addiction. It can be tempting to focus our differences rather than our similarities, but this can blind us to potential sources of support in our recovery. As we hear other members' stories, the most important question to ask ourselves is not, would I have partied with these people, but rather, do these people have a solution that can help me stay sober? We encourage you to stick around and listen with an open mind. With its all-inclusive 3rd tradition and first step, Cocaine Anonymous welcomes anyone with a drug or alcohol problem and offers a solution. CA's 12 steps are not drug-specific, and Cocaine Anonymous is not a drug-specific fellowship. It doesn't matter to us if you drank or what type of drugs you used. If you have a desire to stop, you are welcome here.
It can be tempting to focus us on our differences rather than our similarities, but it can be blind to us potential sources of support in our recovery. As we hear other members' stories, the most important question to ask ourselves is not, would I have partied with these people, but rather, do these people have a solution that can help me stay sober? We encourage you to stick around and listen with an open mind. It is a custom in Cocaine Anonymous to read We Can Recover, taken from the CA storybook. I have asked somebody to come up here and read it.
My name's Nick T. I'm an addict. We can recover. Welcome to Cocaine Anonymous. We are here for the same reason, our inability to stop using cocaine and all other mind-altering substances. The first step forward is admitting that there is a problem. The problem, as we see it, consists of an obsession of the mind, an allergy of the body. The obsession is a continued and irresistible thought of cocaine and the next high. The allergy creates an absolute inability to stop using once we begin. We wish to assure you that there is a solution and that recovery is possible. It begins with abstinence and continues with practicing the 12 steps of recovery, one day at a time. Our program, the 12 Steps of Cocaine Anonymous, is the means by which we move from the problem of drug addiction to the solution of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over cocaine and all other mind-altering substances, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Cocaine Anonymous is a spiritual program, not a religious one. In CA, we believe each individual can choose a higher power of his or her own understanding. In short, a God of his or her own. No one comes into Cocaine Anonymous to find God. We came into these rooms to get rid of a terrifying drug habit. Look around this room. You are surrounded by people who came as a last resort. We came into these rooms emotionally, financially, and spiritually bankrupt. We were all experienced all sorts of tragedies as a result of cocaine, drugs, and/or alcohol. We have lived many of these horrors, you have. Yet today we are free from the misery, terror, and pain of addiction. Maybe some of us were worse off than you. Maybe some of us didn't hit as low a bottom as you. Still, the fact remains that those of us who are recovering have come to believe that a higher power of our own understanding can restore us to sanity. There is a solution. We can recover from addiction one day at a time. It is possible to live a life filled with hope, faith, and courage.
Thank you. The 12 traditions are to the group, but the 12 steps are to the individual. I've asked somebody to read the traditions here.
Hello, my name is Carla and I'm an addict.
Hi, Carla.
The 12 traditions of Cocaine Anonymous. 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon CA unity. 2. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority. a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3. The only requirement for CA membership is a desire to stop using cocaine and all other mind-altering substances. 4. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or CA as a whole. 5. Each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the addict who still suffers. 6. A CA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the CA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7. Every CA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8. Cocaine Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9. CA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10. Cocaine Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the CA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, television, and films. 12. Anonymity is a spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Thank you.
So this afternoon, we are most fortunate to have Ashley, Claudia, and Jim here to the three-way speaker jam. And we have asked Anthony to come up here and to introduce our first speaker, and that will be Ashley. So Anthony.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm more nervous, she's more nervous. Ashling's actually my partner, and I've been asked to come up and introduce her. So I'm going to tell a little story of the first time I met Ashling. When I was first introduced to the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous, and I come in and I was heavily medicated and I was still on drugs and all this kind of stuff. And I was in a meeting and I went out of the meeting and I come out of the meeting and I was thinking, they're all mad. That's a cult in there. They're up to something, like, because people are talking about God and stuff like that. And I was thinking, oh, no way, what am I doing in here? I just remember this little girl running out after me with a big book and saying, page 86, read page 86 every morning on awakening, read that, read the prayers. So I took the big book, and anyway, and I went home and I used to get up in the morning and drink me methadone and roll a joint and smoke it and read page 86 of the big book. That's what I started doing. That's how I got recovery. Then I started going back to rooms and I got clean and I went through the steps, and then a couple of years later we fell in love, and 6 years later we have 2 babies together who live in recovery. They live in a house full of recovery. They live in a home that is built on prayer, meditation, love, service. They see people coming in and out all the time, doing the work. They see people recovering. I have a little daughter, Isabella, her name is, and we'd come in and I'd have guys marking the book out at the table, and she said, I want my pen, and she sits there with a bit of pen and paper scribbling on it while some guy or girl is at the other side of the table marking out that big book. We have a home built on recovery, and for that I'm very, very grateful. I'm very grateful to this lady, so thanks very much. I'm going to introduce Ashling. Are you coming up here? Are you going to stay here?
Hi everybody, my name's Ashling. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I'm very emotional after that as well. And I'm very emotional because what Anthony said is the truth. That's our home life today. And it's all as a result of me coming in broken and battered to the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous. And I had never ever known anything about AA, CA. I didn't know anything about 12-step fellowship. Myself and Anthony are from a place in Dublin called Finglas, and Finglas is probably most famous for shootings and poverty and that kind of thing. So
to drink alcoholically is probably considered the norm. Me and Anthony would be considered abnormal now if they ask you, are you having a drink? And what do you mean you don't drink? You know, it's not what people do where we come from. Like, to take drugs excessively would be considered normal. So for me, coming into CA and hearing the message of recovery was a revolutionary thing. It was mind blowing. I got answers to questions that I didn't even know. Like, for years I went around wondering, what is wrong with me? Why am I like this? Why do I feel the way I feel? And I was like that before I ever picked up a drink or a drug. I come from a home, there's 7 children. It's typical Irish family. Like, there was no contraceptive allowed in Ireland in the 60s because of the church, so everybody had loads of kids. They had nothing else to do. And like, so big families are a big thing as well, and alcoholism is a big thing in Ireland. And I'm the youngest of 7, so there was 6 children all in stepping stones, and then there was a 7-year gap, and then I came along. My mum was like the change of life baby, you know, or that midlife crisis baby. And it's so funny because growing up, I was very, very sensitive and very, very clever as well. I watched things. I was a watcher, you know, because in my home, my dad, he's a lovely man and I adore him, but he was a very fear-based person, and I know that today because of this program. But for years, excuse the language, I just thought he was a prick, you know. He was very controlling and very his way or the highway. And he worked nights, and so during the day when Dad was in bed, because he worked nights, we all had to be quiet. We weren't allowed to move. And then he'd go out to work at night time and the house would explode because my mum was very placid. So I grew up in a mixture of control and chaos, and that's kind of very symptomatic of the way I can be and the way I have been in my life, you know. Not that that's what makes me an addict, but that's just part of my history. Like, so yeah. So growing up, I was a watcher because there was a lot of madness around me. There was arguments and fighting and drink-related stuff and volatility, and I was a watcher. I used to watch everything, and I'm still like that today. And I'd be making sure everything was okay. So like that I'm very, very fearful. And my big book, the big book tells me I suffer with 100 forms of fear. The most probably biggest one for me would be that insecurity. I was super insecure as a child, and I still can be as a woman today. And I just always felt not good enough, you know. And so as a young child, I was always comparing myself to other people. And wishing I had their family and wishing I looked like them. I was always too short, or I didn't like the way I sounded, and always comparing. And so when I used for the first time, whoa, I was like, this is what you've been missing your whole life. This is the magic key, you know. Drugs did for me what I couldn't do for myself. They just took all that crazy shit away from me. They took all the insecurity. And as I was growing older, when I look back now, all that fear started to manifest into anger and resentment as I got older as a teenager. And my mum, when I made amends to her, told me that she had this lovely little girl, and when I became a teenager, she just didn't know who I was anymore because I was so dark and angry, like. And so, yeah, I used, and I suppose I gave my life, my will to the care of drugs there and then. I just loved using, and I thought, fuck them, fuck school, fuck life. This is me now. I'm sorted, like, and I used, and it was ecstasy the first time that I had that experience of like feeling alive inside and having arrived. Ecstasy was a big drug in the 90s in Ireland, and I'll never forget it. Like, I walked into a nightclub and I was insecure and shy and standing against the wall looking at everybody dancing, and I went to the toilet, and when I was in the toilet, the ecstasy came up on me, and I remember walking out of the bathroom and looking in the mirror and going, whoa, you are beautiful. Oh my God, I always knew there was beauty in there. And I left that bathroom and I was a different woman. I got up on that floor and I danced and I was like, thought I was in the Pussycat Dolls. I was on fire. And that's the effect drugs had on me. It gave me power, the power to be the me that I always felt I should be. And I chased that feeling, and like I said, I just said, fuck you to everybody. And my family were like, my mum and dad were like, if you want to live here, you can't take drugs. I said, well, screw you and your gaff, I'm out here. And I left there, and I just stayed wherever. I used to smoke hash chronically as well, and smoke cannabis every day, and take ecstasy all the time. And then I got pregnant, and was taking drugs while I was pregnant. And when I moved home, I had to move back to my parents' house when I had my oldest daughter. She's 20. And that was the first time I experienced the effects of an untreated spiritual malady, because I wasn't using. And how that manifested, I didn't know anything about this. I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. I was full of fear and panic attacks, and that kind of fear that you're paralyzed and you can't move and you can't speak. Like totally stuck in myself. And I went to the doctor and I told my doctor what I was experiencing, and he said to me, oh, you have depression and anxiety, and he wrote me a prescription, and he gave me anti-anxiety medication, and he gave me sleeping pills, and that was my next drug of choice for a couple of years. And I abused them, and I can't really remember them the next couple of years, but benzodiazepines and sleeping and sedatives were my thing then. And I had my nephew died. He was 12. He was killed by a drunk driver. And just before he died, I OD'd. My mum and dad found me I was living in a high-rise flat in Dublin, and they kicked the door in and found me, and I was nearly dead. And I woke up in hospital. I had no memory. Just woke up in hospital. It's after being pumped out. And they said to me, you're not getting Sophie back until you clean your act up. And I was devastated. I was crying, please, no, I'm going to change. I'm going to get clean. And I went to NA, and I was being given, the doctor was giving me daily prescriptions, because I couldn't just come off everything. And I went to NA, and I sat in the rooms, and it's no disrespect to any other fellowship, because I didn't hear anything. All I could hear was what was going on in here, because I now know I just wasn't ready. And I came out, and then my nephew was killed by a drunk driver, and at his funeral, seeing him dead in the coffin, I was like, what am I doing? Why am I still alive and he's dead? And this is very important for me, because me almost losing my child and me watching a child die wasn't enough to stop me from using, because I suffer with this thing inside me that's so big and so strong and so dark that it overrides all of that stuff. The most powerful feelings of grief and maternal love, which are extremely strong experiences as a human being. It's nothing on addiction. There's a monster inside me that needs to be fed. And so I had moments where I sincerely meant that I don't want to use, and I don't want to do that, and I want to be a different person, but I hadn't got the power. Because no matter how great the necessity or the wish, I'm going to use and I'm going to drink. And his funeral, I just it was all about me. I was crying, I was erratic, I was medicated, I was stoned. I just was an embarrassment to my family. And 8 months later, my older brother took his own life. And again, another horrific experience. And I still drank and I still used, even though there was this thing in me that didn't want to. And then I had a great idea. And the great idea was that if I just got clean and drank instead, drugs was the problem, that I'd be able to just be okay drinking. And then for the next few years, I got weaned off all the medication, and then alcohol became my master, and at the end of drinking, it was the same at the end of using. I was in a flat, I was in a place on my own, drinking on my own, using on my own, because all the party was over, and it was very, very pathetic. I was paranoid around people. I didn't want to be around anyone. I just wanted to sit me and my substance. And that's what happens to me when I drink and use. I just become antisocial, and I don't want to be around anyone. I just want to use, just want to drink, and anything else is an irritation to me. So I'm not going to talk much more about me using, because we all know how to use in this room. We all know how to drink. But I had moments in them years where there was moments of clarity towards the end, where I had these experiences where one day I was driving down the road and I had this thought, Ashling, does anyone think about themselves as much as you do? And it was gone then. And one night I was at a party and I was using, and I had this, like at this point, at the end of me drinking and using, I was going to churches and I was going on spiritual retreats because I always believed in God and I always prayed. But I just couldn't, I didn't have the power. Church doesn't even have the power that I need. The big book has the power that I need. And I remember being at a party and I was using, and I had this mad experience where, you know, it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, the light was starting to come in, and it's that real creepy, horrible thing. And like, I just looked around and this voice said to me, Ashling, you're in hell now. And I was like, and I just ran in and done another line, and that was the end of that, like, you know. But I know in my heart that my God was trying to reach out to me all the way through my life, because in my heart I didn't want to be the way that I was. I didn't want to be who I turned out to be in the end. But I had no power, and I keep saying that because I went to churches, but it still didn't give me the power. I had little experiences, but the power wasn't there. And when I came into, the man who 12-stepped me was a pioneer. Claudia beside me is a pioneer in Frankfurt. And this man was a pioneer in CA in Ireland. And this man has been responsible for many, many people in Ireland coming into recovery. And he got clean, and he used to drive around the area we grew up in and shout out at people, do you want a new way of life? Jump in, we're going to a meeting. Or, come on, you don't have to do it anymore. And he was on fire, like. And this man stuck around me for 3 years. And he didn't shout the big book at me, and he didn't quote the book to me. He just was very, very kind to me. That's how he 12-stepped me. Kindness and love. And I say that because it goes a long way. Giving someone a smile or a nod or reaching out to them in the spirit, that's kindness is the language of love. And his kindness was what made me eventually, when the brokenness came, turn to him, you know. And I was at the end of my drinking, it was just crazy. I can't remember a lot of it because a lot of it was in blackouts. But I had an experience one night sitting in my house, and I'd just been on a bender for 3 days. And the last day of my drinking, I had drove to, my friends were in a pub, and all the way over to the pub, I was saying, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink for about an hour. I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink. And I walked in and she said, do you want a bottle? And I said, yeah. And I drank it. No power, you know. And it was after that bender for 3 days, then I was sitting in my house smoking weed, and I had a profound experience with a loving God, but the experience wasn't very kind and loving. It was very scary, actually. And it started off like with a headache. And I never talk about this because I would be a little bit embarrassed or just like a fear of judgment. That's what it is like. But I had an experience, and it was like I seen my whole life flashing before my eyes from young age all the way up. And this voice spoke to me and it said, Ashling, what are you doing? What is your life? What is your existence? And at this, everything's flashing through my mind, all these years and experiences. And it said, you're not fooling anyone. You're just an actress. You're just playing a part. You're not fooling anyone. You're not fooling me. And bang, I was back in the room. And I was like, I'm losing my mind. What's wrong with me? And a friend of mine was there, and she put me to bed. And the next morning when I woke up, and I wasn't like that, and I wasn't all shaky, I got down on my knees and I was crying, and I said, God, please, I can't live like this anymore. Help me. And that was the first sincere prayer I had said. I'd been going to churches, I'd been going on spiritual retreats, but that was the first time in my heart I said out loud, I need help. Because someone like me never said that they needed help. I was always watching and fixing and trying to fix everyone and fix everything, and so controlling. And to say out loud, I need help, was a profound experience for me. And I opened up, I had a Bible by my bed because I had Bibles and crucifixes and all always around me, always seeking, like, and the Bible opened up on a page, and it was, there's a time to heal, there's a time to grow, there's a time to change. And Sean came to mind, and I rang Sean, and he brought me to my first meeting. And when I came into the rooms, for me, hearing the message of recovery was another profound experience. Hearing people talk about fear and resentment, I was able to put names on experiences that I had for all my life that I didn't understand. And when I went to doctors or psychiatrists, they medicated me. But all I ever needed was to be connected to a power greater than me. You know, what God has in store for every single person that sincerely takes this way of life is mind blowing. You know, I heard people talking about service, how it's imperative to get well is to take up service. And even when I had nothing to give, I was trying to give. I'd say to, do you want to go to a meeting? I had nothing to give them, but I had a car. Come on, we'll go to a meeting. If I seen someone struggling, do you want to go for a cup of tea? I had nothing to give them, but I could offer something. And from the start, that's where what I did. Prayer, meditation, page 86 to 88, all that stuff, and helping others. And helping others has been like just what I do. It's just what I do now, you know. It's just part of my life. What Anta was talking about, our home is like a revolving door for people coming in and out, you know. All through my 2 pregnancies, I sponsored women. Isabella now opens the book, and my big book has scribbles in it, and that's our life, is 12-step recovery. And I get to witness the miracle of God every single time I sit down with another woman. I've had the pleasure of watching marriages get back together. I've had the pleasure of watching families become reunited. I've seen so many things that I can't even say or fathom at times, but it's just amazing. And I'm just so blessed. And I want to read a bit out of the book, because for me, all the stuff that I hid and was ashamed of all my life, now today is my greatest gift. Because in 12-step recovery, it's a conversion experience. God takes all your shit and turns it into something beautiful. And that's my experience. So I just want to read out this part and then I'll hand it over. So Henry Ford once made the wise remark to the effect that experience is the thing of supreme value in life. That is true only if one is willing to turn the past to good account. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. Making amends, profound experience. My father, who I spoke about at the start, he was my number one resentment. I hated him and I blamed him on everything. And I hated every other man, sorry lads, but I hated all men because of him. I had no respect for any man because of my feelings towards my father. And doing that 9th-step amends just changed my whole relationship with my parents. I made that amends 6 years ago, and I wasn't welcome in their home for a long time. And today I have the key of their house. And my father had a stroke 3 years ago, and I take care of him and my mother every day. They're elderly now. And that's the power of the 9th-step amends. For me, I see it every day, you know. The alcoholic's past thus becomes the principal asset of the family, and frequently it's almost the only one. This painful past may be of infinite value to other families still struggling with their problems. We think each family which has been relieved owes something to those who have not, and when the occasion requires, each member of it should be only too willing to bring former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. Showing others who suffer how we were given help is the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile to us now. Cling to the thought that in God's hands, your dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. With it, you can avert death and misery for them. How powerful is that? So I'm going to leave it there. I hope somebody got something from that. And I'll hand it over to Claudia, who's a pioneer in Germany.
Wow, what a powerful share. My name is Claudia, and I do identify myself as an addict. I am an addict. I'm a recovered addict thanks to the program and the fellowship of Cocaine Anonymous. I have a sponsor. I'm being sponsored. I sponsor others. I do service. I have a home group. I work this program as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've had a very similar experience to what I just heard from Ashling. Let me start who I was. I was self-centered to begin with. I was lonely, I was disconnected, and that kind of was the way I was from early on when I was a little child. My parents are everything is so normal about my life, it's almost sickening. My parents are very normal people. They go to work, they pay taxes, no violence in our house, no abuse, no addiction manifesting itself until I come along. And we live in a small town where my parents moved there, and all the other kids at school, they have family and grandparents and bigger family all around them. So I feel like they've got roots here, I don't. And it's kind of normal for me that I'm an outsider and I sit on my little lonely island. Never, ever would it have occurred to me that I suffer from a disease, from the disease of addiction, that is a spiritual malady where I'm just empty on the inside. I was born that way. And the drug that came into my life when I was 15 was alcohol. And I did the same thing, you know, I took it, I loved it, I took more till I passed out. The allergy kicked in straight away. And I thought, you know, this is great. This is awesome. Finally, I can talk to guys. They love me. I can look in the mirror and actually enjoy what I see. I'm beautiful. You are beautiful. I love you. Let's talk some more. Let's dance some more. Let's flirt some more and else some more. And, you know, from there on, I spent the next 20 years trying to drink like other people. The next 20 years are an attempt to live like other people, but I'm not like other people. I'm ill at ease, I'm uncomfortable in my own skin, I'm restless, irritable, discontent, and somewhere on the inside, I do know something is wrong with me. Something is really wrong with me. No one ever said that to me, but I know it. It's somewhere inside me. It is there, somehow in my DNA or wherever. Something is wrong with me. Those people out there in this normal life, they've got something going on that makes them build lives. You know, they start families, they build careers, they set goals and work towards them, and life grows. And I just trip from one party to another, and from one plan to another, from one man to another. And I'm a person without morals, and I don't like who I am at the end. 20 years later, I tried so much. I tried jobs, I tried becoming a mother, getting pregnant. I had a son. I live in a place where on the outside everything really looks beautiful, but on the inside I'm done. And there's no power in me. And suddenly I realize this particular bottle, really, this stuff doesn't taste. It's awful. It's like drinking vinegar. I shouldn't drink it. And what do? I drink it. And so one fine day I decide, well, today I'm not going to drink. What do? I drink. And I go through that cycle again and again and again. And I had always thought these past 20 years, if I ever come to a point where I decide I'm not going to have a drink today, I will not have a drink today. I'll just stop. And I was totally baffled and surprised. I couldn't do it. And I very well remember the last drink I ever had. I'm standing on top of stairs. I had just read my son a good night story, a nighttime story. He was 3 years old. I switched off the light. I closed the doors. I walk out. I had already separated from my husband, but I'm in his house, read the bedtime story, and I want to go back home. And back home in my apartment, around the corner, down the road, there is a refrigerator, and in that refrigerator still is some booze. I don't think all this, but that's how my radar is going. And the door opens behind me and my son says, "Mom, can you read me another bedtime story?" And I don't know how often God had tried to reach out to me and to tap on my shoulder that something is wrong with me and I need to change and I need help. You know, I'm sure that message had come to me often enough, but for the first time I heard it. What I want to do, I want to turn around and slap anything out of the way that gets between me and my next drink. That's who I've become. And I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be that mother. I didn't want to be that woman. I didn't want to be like that. And I could tell from here, you know, it's only going to go down, down, down. And I turned around, nothing happened on the outside, read my son another bedtime story, I go home. And the next day I was invited to a party and I called the friend, she had a birthday party, and I called her in the morning. What I had from that evening, I had a decision that was whatever I need to do to recover, to get well, to change, I'm going to do it. So the next morning I call my friend and I tell her, look, I can't get this, I cannot not drink. I wish you a happy birthday. I come over in the afternoon, but I'm not coming to the party because I know there will be beer and I will have one and I don't want that anymore. She said, yeah, okay. She had a fine party without me. And, you know, we talk about what we used to be like, what happened and what we are like today. What happened was I came into rooms of recovery of another fellowship, and what it gave me was a bit of relief. I came in there and I realized when I talk about my problem as it is right now, I got a bit of relief from other people saying, yeah, we know, we've been there. I get a bit of relief. And they say, keep coming back, go to meetings, keep coming. That's all you have to do. You only have to come back, go to meetings, and not pick up another drink. Okay, so I do what I'm told. I keep coming back. And, you know, bless them. People told me I don't need to do whatever that book says. People told me, I've been sober for 20 years and I never did any of those steps. That was the message that was given to me at a certain place in a certain surrounding by certain people. 1 year later, I'm hanging on for dear life. I've had cravings that were so mad. I never had cravings before I got sober. Well, of course, because I was drinking daily. You don't get to develop a craving if you're drinking. And what happened next? 1 year later, I've had a year without a drink, and it's Christmas time. My father came to pick me up for Christmas, and him and my son is now 4, we're driving a country road. It's cold, but the roads are clear. So I'm looking in the rearview mirror and I have these new sunglasses and I look really cool and really cute. And I really like the way my hair looks today, and I'm noticing how pretty I am, and I'm noticing, and I have this fleeting thought, if Brad Pitt came by right now, he'd really be impressed. You know, the way we are. And while I'm being self-obsessed with my own image, what would a Hollywood star who's not here right now, but what would he think if he saw me now? You know, while I'm going through all these wild, stupid scenarios in my head, I'm locked up in my head. I'm not free. I haven't done any real step work. I'm not in recovery. I'm between the last drink and the entrance to recovery. I lose control over the car, and the car flips on top of the road. I mean, it flips around, and my father and my son are in the back seat, and my father screams at me, Claudia, what are you doing? And that moment, the one thing that I want to say that is instantly there is, shut up, I know what I'm doing. That's me, that's the person I am without a program. And the next thing I see is we land, we smash against a tree, and I look around, I'm not hurt one bit, and I look at those two, at my father and my son behind me. My son is covered with broken glass, his head is to the side, and he says, Mom, I have such a headache. My father is white as a wall, and I'm thinking, he's gonna have his last breath within the next 60 seconds. Miracle that happened was A, we didn't hit other cars that were coming towards us, and B, the next car that came stopped, and it was a doctor who immediately helped both of them, looked after us, ambulances came. Both of them, my father and my son, fully recovered from whatever they had to recover from physically. What happened to me in that car accident was, you know, before that, I had had a lot of great ideas. I had read spiritual books that talk about the law of attraction and positive affirmations and think positive. And, you know, I was supposed, one book told me I was supposed to write a list of 100 wishes and they will all come true in my life. And bollocks! It got me to kill the people I love most, nearly. And suddenly, as I'm looking at those two men, I'm done. And then and there, I let go absolutely. And I said, you know, God, whatever you want from me next, I'll just do it. I'll just do it without debating, without talking back, without thinking whether I like it or whether I think it's right. God, whatever you put in front of me next, I'll just do it. And I had that moment there, and I was going to take a formal third step later on, but for me that was my step 3, when I turned it over fully to a God I didn't understand. I don't understand God till not today, but God is big in my life today, and you know, is very, very, what's the word, effective in my life, works in my life today. And what happened next, you know, when the student becomes willing, the teacher shows up. What I hadn't heard up until then, someone saying, you know what, it doesn't have to be that way. If you work these 12 steps in this book under the guidance of a sponsor, your life will change because you will change. Selfishness, self-centeredness is your problem. Someone dared to look me in the eye and say that to me. I don't take criticism very well, but my first sponsor had the guts to tell me, look, selfishness, self-centeredness is your problem. And I think I was so speechless that I didn't talk back then. So I found my first sponsor, a lovely lady. She started taking me through the work. We did a 4th and a 5th, as outlined in the book. The day she told me, I want you to take inventory, as it says it in the book. You know, here are the columns. This is what you do. This is what you write. She said, and you've got 2 weeks to get finished with this. I'm like, 2 weeks? I'll never get that done. She talked to her sponsor afterwards. Her sponsor reminded her, well, you know what? You had 2 weeks when you did it, but you were unemployed. If she's working, she needs a little more time. So my sponsor gave me 3 weeks. But whatever she said, you know, I did it just because that's what she said. She was someone who had recovered, and I wanted what she had. And I got a bit of relief. What I still didn't have was the message of Cocaine Anonymous. And I came across Cocaine Anonymous in a very funny way. My first sponsor moved back, disappeared. I looked for other sponsorship. I saw someone who had recovered in Cocaine Anonymous. And I saw how that person conducted himself, always quoting from the book, always being helpful, always early at a meeting, always reaching out to newcomers, always talking to the new man in the room and saying, here, let's swap phone numbers, always calling them. And I really liked that. And through this person, I got introduced to CA. And, you know, I never used cocaine or any other drugs, but I say I am an addict because we have the same disease. You know, alcohol was not a drug of choice. It was a drug of circumstance. It simply was what happened in my life, what came to me. And yeah, what happened next? So I continue to be sponsored. And the moment I pick up daily actions, you know, my first sponsor, she was really, really useful in many, many ways. And then I started sponsoring others. I sponsored a lady who came to rooms, who was desperate. And so, you know, I check in with my sponsor. What do I do? How do I guide her through the work? And she says, my sponsor tells me, you shouldn't let her do a 4th step in her first year. That's too early. That woman relapsed. She came up to 364 days, I believe, and then she went out and drank again, and I never saw her again. I don't do that anymore today. When I work with newcomers, I work the way I've been shown it in CA, and that is, let nothing stand between you and this recovery program. I don't have time to hang around and wait for a step to come to me. That doesn't happen. And so, for a certain time without CA, I was already in the book and I was already working with the book, and I got that bit of relief here and that bit of relief there. I went and did a 9th step with my ex-husband, and I was so scared of telling him, I am an alcoholic and I need to do this because otherwise I can't get over my drinking, and I want to make amends to you because I haven't been the wife that you deserved. I didn't want to go to him with that and ask him for forgiveness and offer him to pay this and that back. But I did it simply because the book says that's what we do. And I was really nervous about custody. If he knows this about me, he could take custody away from me, and then he has custody over our son alone, and that's too big a risk. I had to put that in God's hands. I cannot afford to walk around with lies in my life. I need to be able to be honest. My employer knows who I am, what my disease is. I've always been tactfully, where it is appropriate, honest about who I am. I don't need to hide or play being someone who I'm not, being that actor. I think I still have 8 minutes and I don't want to miss CA. CA-HOLLAND. 2000, so a few years down the road, I've changed sponsorship, and I've finally found the sponsor who I could stick with, because that is a recovered woman in Cocaine Anonymous. And we hook up, we meet in Den Haag. At the last year, this Dutch convention was in Den Haag. I go up to Den Haag. Rico, Janice, and Mike were sharing that year. And wow, I hear those people who've definitely used at other drugs and other circumstances and other parts of the world with other whatever, and they describe me. I remember one of them describing, my first day at school, I look out the school bus window and life is going by and I'm not a part of it. I see some people nodding. You were in the room with me that time. So, me, who formerly was told, you're an alcoholic, you're not an addict, I suddenly realized he is an addict talking, and he knows who I am. I could identify with that 100 times more than with a lot of other stuff I heard in meetings I had been attending so far. And, and I heard someone say, when I'm out on the party, I'm the sex bomb swinging on the chandelier. That's me. When I'm drunk, I'm the sex bomb swinging on the chandelier. Now, that's what I think. Everyone else at the party has very different thoughts. They think I'm just embarrassing and they need to call the police. And so I fell in love with CA there. I picked up the literature of Cocaine Anonymous and, daily actions. If I've ever seen, what I was missing was the unity that we can all agree on a course of action. This is what recovery is, and this is how we do it. It's nothing where you should find out how in your individual case it may probably work. Whenever it does work, you make that decision. No. I was given daily actions that I still take today. I reach out to others, I use the phone, I show up early, I do service, and I've been very privileged. I don't feel like a pioneer at all, by the way, but I've had the privilege of creating the fellowship I seek. So after that Dutch convention, they gave us a starter kit. We took the starter kit home, and it sat there with us. And 4 months later, we start a CA meeting in Frankfurt. And we now... This round of applause goes to that 2 rows of people, because they are the ones who keep it running. They do the service there. So we start a CA meeting. I'm unemployed at the time. And that little pledge I had with God, whatever you put in front of me, I'll just do it. Suddenly I find myself and David, the 2 of us realize, oh my goodness, we have a meeting here every week. What are we going to do? We're going to sit here for 60 minutes and talk to each other about our, that's going to be very boring very soon. So what we needed next was CA speaker, CA experience. Well, we didn't have any in the area, and we couldn't rely on gracious, generous traveling CA recovered addicts coming to us every week. So I decided, well, I'm unemployed. Maybe I should be focusing on the job hunt and on my professional life. Now, while I'm doing the best I can in the job I have at the moment, I focus on carrying the message of CA, and I translate a speaker every week. And as you know, another week, translate another speaker, another week goes by, translate another speaker. So every week we read a story from this book. And that's how we carried this message to our area. And suddenly, the dream job that I couldn't even have dreamed up comes to me through a newcomer. There was a lady who I had reached out to after a meeting. I got her phone number. I don't think she's one of us, actually. She's someone with sufficient reason could stop. Good for her. And I meet her some other time, and she says, how are you? Yeah, looking for full-time employment. And she sends me a link, and that's the dream job that I apply for, and they hire me, and now I'm flying the world. And you know, the woman that I am today is not the woman that I was when I came in. When I came in, I was spiritually bankrupt. I was financially bankrupt. I was unemployable. I was riddled with fears, with depression, with misery. I was full of resentments. I was full of judgment of others. I was just so unhappy and so clueless and confused. And you know, what happened to me over these years is that power came into my life. I learned to ask, you know, how do I do this? How do I do that? I was always afraid if I ask anyone, how do you actually do this? That person might think, I don't know how to do it. And I was so obsessed with pretending I know everything that I never was able to learn anything because I could never ask. And a complete change of thought and attitude. My thinking, my feeling, and the way I act today is a complete change from what it used to be. I mean, you know, I used to think, I have to smile. Dr. Bob's farewell speech, he says, you know, we all know, you know, when we simmer it down to the last, what our program is about is love and service. And we all know what love is, and we all know what service is. Well, trust me, I didn't know it. You know, what love is? Love, I thought love is I want. You know, when I want someone bad enough that I latch on and that I go out of my way to grab that person, that's love. It's not. And the place where I learned something about love was when I started working with others, when I sat with another desperate soul, women with women, you know, and we talked about what happens when we change and when we let God into our lives. That's where I learned to love people. I used to think that intimacy, nothing is so confusing to us as that. And I used to think intimacy is a hormone cascade of wild, athletic bedroom performance. I mean, you know, and the big book says we will learn a finer intimacy, and the intimacy of being honest with someone, of letting down my hair, of being who I am, of not pretending I am someone who I'm not trying to impress. You know, there's a huge intimacy in that. I can sit with my husband today and we can just look each other in the eye, and in a very little way of touching one another, there's a much finer and bigger and softer and warmer and more genuine intimacy than anything we ever did before we made into recovery. So I think by now I should come. I've used up 25 minutes, and if you're new here, if you're struggling, Sponsorship was the key for me. I'm still being sponsored today. Couldn't have done it without a sponsor, because she was the only one who could help me get honest about myself, armed with facts about herself. I see these lovely, lovely sayings on the wall, but they're here for decoration. They are stuff that makes sense for me after I have worked all of the 12 steps. My life is based on the steps 10, 11, and 12, and my sponsor was the one who introduced me to that and who keeps introducing me to that. And I'll leave it at that. And I now have the privilege of introducing Jim. And I know about Jim, he's been around much longer than maybe both of us together. I don't know. I don't want to make you sound older than you are. I've been told Jim is one of the people who have decades and lots of experience. He's flying around the world for and with CA. So I look forward to hearing more about that.
Thank you. I'm Jim and I'm an addict.
Hi, Jim.
I mean, between you two, I mean, you've covered everything. So this will be brief. No, it's really interesting to hear the common experience and the common things. I mean, I was the youngest child of 6. And, you know, my house was chaos. And I observed and I hid, you know, because I didn't like the chaos. And, you know, that's how I dealt with it. You know, very uncomfortable. You know, my mother was an alcoholic. My father was a workaholic. My older brother and sisters were varying degrees of, you know, drug addicts and alcoholics. And that's what I was looking at. You know, drinking. You know, what's this gallon jar of red pills? You know, I'm a little kid looking at these older people and picking up my cues. And, you know, so I had an early experience with alcohol. Initially by mistake and afterwards on purpose. You know, as a toddler, I would suck on the ice cubes from my parents' parties. And I can still taste the scotch in my mouth right now. And, you know, there were a lot of activities with all these kids running around the house, sports and you know, we went to church, you know, Catholic, of course, you know, no birth control in Tulsa, Oklahoma either, you know, where I grew up. You know, it's a small place. The whole state has 3 million people, but, you know, there's opportunities, you know, to explore and to discover new things. And like I said, you know, I was ill at ease. I didn't like the way my family dynamic worked. You know, I had this dis-ease from when I was a little kid. And I would go up to my room and I would get in my closet when my father and my sister were screaming at each other. You know, I spent a lot of time in a closet at the end of my using too. You know, I just happened to be naked and have a little glass pipe in my hand. But so, you know, I'm picking up these cues from my sisters and my brother. I know what the taste of alcohol is, and I'm a very entertaining toddler. You know, a 2 or 3-year-old kid running around this party, drunk, altered, and the parents think it's really cute. Oh, look at Jim. Oh, look at that. Oh, yeah, better put him to bed, you know, before he hurts himself. And so, you know, I get a few years behind me and start participating in some sports. And I have an opportunity when I'm 8 years old to win a bet. And you know, we're at I guess it's the banquet dinner of a swimming team. And one of the parents is a distributor of Coors beer. So they have a big banquet facility in this beer hall, you know, this beer distributorship. And they have these gigantic cups. And a bunch of kids snuck off into this other room where they have tappers on the wall. And some kid bet me $1 that I couldn't drink one of these cups. I'm 8 years old. And I said, I'll take that bet because, you know, I'm the youngest in a family of 6 children. I'm one of the youngest on this swim team, and I'm always looking up at these older people, you know, wanting to impress them or make them laugh or whatever. So I took this guy's bet, and they pour out this beer, and it looks big, and I drink it. And I drink it down. I'm an 8-year-old kid. And I say, okay, I drank the beer and give me $1. And he told me to go pound sand. He said, no, I'm not going to give you $1. But, you know, I got this beer. So after that, I don't really remember anything until the next day. You know, like a good Catholic, I went to Sunday school and I wasn't feeling very well. And so I got up and I walked over to my teacher and I said, teacher, you know, I'm not really feeling, and I threw up all over this woman in Sunday school. And, you know, my parents didn't really understand why I was feeling like I was. It was a mystery to them. You know, I was just a sick kid, but, you know, that was my first of many episodes with getting sick after drinking lots and lots of alcohol. You know, eventually that technique just seemed to make more room so I could drink more. But, you know, it was, you know, a typical progression. You know, I went to school, had relationships with kids, you know, looking at my older sisters and brother, you know, looking at these people that I was, you know, surrounded with and still just not feeling easy. But, you know, drinking and entertaining my teammates, you know, that seemed to work out okay. You know, and I was working, you know, I would work on weekends, I would work on vacations, and I always had a little bit of money working for this family business. I also had a paper route, you know, throw papers, deliver papers. And when I turned 14, I had saved up enough money to buy a motorcycle so I could have a bigger paper route. And it also gave me access to new ways to get altered, you know, to drink. I would drive myself, you know, ride my motorcycle to school every day, and every day I would go by this one gas station, get a quart of beer. I'd drink a quart of beer before I went to school. You know, that went on forever. I mean, that's when I had my own transportation, my own access. So I was drinking every day. And the people that I was hanging out with were drinking every day. You know, some of the people that I was hanging out with were smoking pot every day. So I would hang out with the people that were drinking every day and the people that were smoking pot every day, and the two groups didn't necessarily go together, but I like both groups, so I like to hang out with them both. You know, getting drunk and getting high, the way it altered me was different, and I appreciated that. You know, I liked the way this felt, and I liked the way that felt, and you know, then you could do them together. You know, mix them all around. So I haven't had any negative consequences, you know, other than a few motorcycle wrecks and things like that, because I was always on my motorcycle and I was always drunk. And I would race my motorcycles and I would crash them and you know, things like that. I crashed them enough where when I turned 16, I decided I didn't need a motorcycle anymore. I needed 4 wheels because motorcycles were really tippy. So I started driving drunk, and you know, I smashed a lot of cars, and it was never my fault. You know, I'd bring a smashed car home at 3 a.m. and I'd work up, you know, the tears and everything, and I would always say, well, I was driving through the intersection, the speed limit, and this car just came by and smashed into me and ran off. And of course, I was the one who was speeding through the intersection, smashing into a car and taking off. So, you know, the thought that I had a problem with alcohol or drugs never, ever occurred to me. You know, I hear people say, oh, I wish I could stop. That never entered my mind. I mean, never, not until the very, very end. Everybody that all of my friends drank like me. You know, all of my friends, you know, were doing drugs like me. I didn't know anybody that wasn't getting loaded every single day. I based where I wanted to go to college on who drank like I drank. You know, if I went to a college to look around, you know, if they didn't have, you know, 15 kegs of beer sitting there, I didn't want anything to do with them. And that's what guided my whole life, drinking and using. You know, I have an older sister who's just 11 months older than I am. You know, we grew up together. You know, she's a drug addict and an alcoholic just like me. You know, she was my first sponsor. When I was 13 years old, she had a friend over, and she came down the hallway. It was Friday night. Her friend was spending the night. You know, I'm 13. You know, dinner was over. I was watching TV. Nothing was going on for me that night. And she comes down the hallway, and she goes, Jim. She goes, do you want to get high? And I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, at 13, I hadn't gotten high yet. You know, I wasn't drinking every day till I had a motorcycle at 14. So I go down the hallway with my sister, and I still remember her friend's name. It was Kelly Plummer, and they were sitting on my sister's bed, you know. So we go in there, and the door gets closed, and my sister puts the towel underneath the crack of the door so my parents can't smell the pot smoke. You know, I learned that later. So they sit there and they have a bong. And, you know, I didn't know exactly what a bong was. And so they showed me. And, you know, Kelly Plummer, she took a bong hit. And they're going, okay, now you put your finger here and, you know, we're going to do this. You light it like this. And okay. And my sister did a bong hit. And, you know, okay, you put it here, you put your thumb here, and you start breathing. You take your thumb off, and then you breathe it in. I'm like, okay. So I get the bong in front of me, and I'm like, you know, there's pot in here, and I put my thumb here, and I'm holding it, and I light it, and, you know, like this. And I suck it all down. You know, the cherry goes down the stem, and I release my thumb, and I just go, and I hold my breath. And I keep holding my breath. And I hold my breath just a long time. My sister goes, you can breathe out now. So I breathe out. You know, there's no smoke in my breath or anything. And I'm just sitting there staring at him on the bed. for a long time. I'm just staring at them. And they're like doing this, and they're, you know, they've been smoking pot for a while, and they think it's really funny. And they're like, they go, Jim, are you okay? And I don't say anything. And it's like, Jim, are you okay? And I sat there, and I've been silent for quite a while. They said, what, do you have to say something? How do you feel? And I said to him, my head feels like a block of cement. So my sister was my first sponsor, and she showed me how to get high. And that was a new experience, you know, a new feeling, a new way to get altered. And so I liked that. You know, I did cocaine in high school. You know, we used to do stupid things with it. You know, we would snort it, we'd put it in our eyes and all kinds of stuff just to watch our pupils change and stuff like that. So I'm a drug addict. I'm an alcoholic. And with the exception of car crashes and motorcycle wrecks, you know, I don't have too many negative consequences. Up to that point in high school, I've only run over one person. And he was a friend of mine. And we one day decided we were going to drink a keg of beer. There were 4 people. And we drank this keg of beer. And afterwards, the 3 other people that I drank it with, they were in the street. Their pants were around their ankles, and they're all mooning me. And I'm in my car, and I'm accelerating towards them. And the 2 guys on the outside jumped out of the way, and the guy in the middle didn't. And his head, I clipped him, and his head went right through the windshield, and he rolled off the top of the car. Now, he was as drunk as I was, so he was really wiggly and loose, so he didn't get hurt. But, you know, I had this, you know, I keep taking these smashed cars home, and I'm like coming up with ideas. I said, well, how am I going to explain this? It's the size of a head. It's a perfect indentation in this windshield. What am I going to do? And I looked at my friend whose house we were at, and I said, go get a baseball bat, you know, like a cricket mallet or something like that, you know, a wooden bat. And so he went up to his room, and he got this wooden bat, and I just pounded the windshield out. I just pounded it out. And when I took the car home, I told my parents that I went bowling that night and someone had vandalized the car. So, I mean, after I got sober, I had this discussion with my father about all this shit that was going on in my life during, you know, when I was growing up in his house. And all the car wrecks, all the consequences, all the shit that I was lying about. And, you know, he pretty much knew that I was full of shit and I was drunk. And but the way that I presented it to him was really pretty good. My mother had passed away right before I got sober. You know, but she probably knew everything anyway, because, you know, being the youngest in the family, you know, typically, you know, you're the favorite. But, you know, relationships change in sobriety. You know, my father, I thought, was a prick also growing up. It's funny how, you know, perceptions change, but people don't, you know. My perception of the world changed when I got sober, but the world didn't change. You know, the world is exactly as it is. You know, the world that I lived in when I was in the life got worse and worse and worse. You know, your voice told you that you were living in hell, and I was definitely You know, I existed in the pit. You know, they talk in the Bible about, you know, hell, Hades, and the pit. And I just related to that pit, you know, fire and brimstone. And because that's where my disease took me. You know, all these fun and games, you know, were pretty entertaining for the people around me, you know, while I was young and really getting serious about, you know, doing drugs and focusing my entire life on maintaining, you know, a load on. I mean, that's all I did. I mean, I drank and I used drugs. Um, you know, the beginning of the end for me was similar to a lot of people's experience. You know, I met a girl uh, who knew how to rock up cocaine, and she asked me if I wanted to smoke it. And of course, I said yes. You know, I'd said yes to everything. You know, I'd said yes, you know, to magic mushrooms. You know, I said yes to acid. I said yes to, uh, I don't know, Molly, MDMA. You know, ecstasy is what they called it back in the 80s. Um, that's when it was brand new in the 80s. And I don't know what it's like now, but it was pretty good back then. Um, so when I started smoking cocaine, that was the beginning of the end. And that was, you know, it didn't last more than 9 months. You know, sometimes I have these weird thoughts. Uh, you know, someone is struggling with drugs and alcohol. Someone is doing this, doing that. I have friends who've been drinking all their lives, like I used to drink. And I'm just like, well, all you need to do is start smoking cocaine, and in about 3 or 4 months or 5 months, you know, you'll be ready to, you know, change your life. That was my experience, and I'm lucky that, you know, I survived it. Um, so yeah, I mean, my drug dealers thought I was a policeman. Um, they didn't like the way I looked. They didn't like the car I drove. They didn't like the hours that I kept. I was a very demanding drug addict. I knew where all of my drug dealers left or lived, and I would go over to their house all hours of the night, kicking and beating on their doors until they opened the door. And you know, they would, you know, they put up with me. Um, it got to the point where, you know, wasn't working, wasn't participating with the family. I was, you know, in my house, standing in a closet, basically naked, you know, smoking cocaine. um, my sister, who was my first sponsor at 13, um, she got sober. You know, she was doing Quaaludes and shots of tequila in high school, and she got sober, and she had like, I don't know, 5, 10 years of sobriety, and was a drug and alcohol counselor at Betty Ford in California. And my brother and my father called her up one day, and they explained to her how I was acting. They would say, oh, he does this and he does this, and he never shows up, and this and that and the other. I said, do you have any idea what's wrong with Jim? And she goes, he's smoking cocaine. Because she knows, you know, people like us know what people like us do and how we act. She knew, so they took me out of the situation and sent me to treatment. And you know, treatment was fun. It was good, but I didn't get sober um, until pretty much everything came crashing down. And I got sober in Cocaine Anonymous. I went back home. I walked into a meeting. One of my old drug dealers was sitting right here, and this other guy I didn't know was sitting next to him, and they just started laughing their asses off when I walked in that door. And the guy that I knew, I said, "What's so fucking funny?" And he goes, "You." He goes, "We've been saving this seat for you for years." So those were my two running buddies. Those were the guys that when I was working the steps with my sponsor, we were developing, the fellowship. We were going out after the meetings and having coffee. I'm working my steps. They've been sober for years. I knew one well, and I knew the other one. I was getting to know the other one. And as I was having these experiences working the steps, I would tell them about it. I was talking to my sponsor about it, and they're just like, "Yeah, that's great. Wait till you get to the next one. Something else is going to happen. You'll either notice it then or you won't. We're going to notice it. We may let you know about it or not, but it's going to be really different." And, I was at the point too. I just didn't, I had no questions. My sponsor told me to do it like this, and I did it with him like that. I developed an incredible friendship with the people in Cocaine Anonymous. I mean, I went to CA. CA is the fellowship that I crave. I'll go to another meeting here and there, but I got sober in CA. When I was hitting the pipe, I stopped drinking. I'd been drinking a lot my whole life, but man, that was the only thing I was interested in once I discovered that rock. And my sponsor and the men that I was being, they were basically welcoming me into this fellowship, and we were having a good time. I didn't know what life was going to be like after I got sober. The abstinence part was scary. Then starting to work the program, I just had to do it. If I didn't do it, I wasn't going to be around. And the guys that I met in the program were having a good time. I mean, they were going out, coffee, dinner, bowling, movies, concerts, festivals, things like that, getting out in the sunshine, getting out of the closet. It was just incredible. Life began for me with sobriety. Everything that I was doing before then was just a complete, all the drugs and alcohol just blocked me from the energy of the universe. When I got into sobriety, I discovered that energy of the universe resides within us all. And it's fun. I did the steps in order, one at a time, the way my sponsor told me to do it, and it recreated my life. And I met people in recovery that were having a fucking blast. And that's the best thing about it. I mean, we are not a glum lot. We have a good time. We have good times at conventions. We have good times visiting each other in our homes in different countries and all over the freaking place. So this is the fellowship I crave. If you're new, you want something different. This is different. You want your life to be different than it is today. Work the steps with a sponsor in order. Your life will be different. It's certainly going to be different than what you had. I didn't want what I had. That was the worst existence that I can imagine. And today I have the greatest existence that I can imagine, and there's surprises every day. It's like, oh, I never even thought about that, and it becomes a reality in my life. That is so fabulous. I mean, it just, everything is it can be new. Every day is new, and I can be sober one day at a time in this fellowship. And thank you very much.
Dank u. So I would like to close by having somebody reaching out to come up here and read it.
Hello everybody, my name is Onno, I'm an addict. Reaching out. I made it into this program because someone else worked their 12th step on me. Someone passed it on to me. Someone was out there after they got clean and sober, caring about others. I need to never ever forget that. Had they simply gone on with their lives and forgotten about people like me who were still out there using and suffering, I wouldn't be here today. My gratitude begins with that fact. It is with that gratitude in mind that I reach out to others, especially the newcomers. I need to have them in my life. That is where my spirituality begins. For me, spirituality comes from caring about others. I have found out that the more I focus on improving the quality of the lives of others, the less I am into myself and my will. I feel a freedom and peace from within. The gifts I am beginning to receive in my life are greater than I could ever have imagined. Something else I have done is that I have forgiven myself. I have forgiven myself for being an addict. I have forgiven myself for all the damage I did to my life, to my physical health, and my career and finances. But most of all, I have forgiven myself for all of the horrible, negative, and unloving things I have felt about myself. It was not until I offered and accepted my own forgiveness that I was truly able to grow in my sobriety. Thank you.
All right, let's close it up with the Serenity Prayer. Jim, would you like to guide us in the Serenity Prayer?